just gonna take my mask off so that people can hear me.
Of course.
Okay, so we are here at Assabet River National Wildlife Refuge. Really cool spot. And this is, it used to be a military base, so it would have looked very different, you know, a bunch of years ago. But now it got transferred to U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and as, you know, the nature just started coming back on its own, which is really cool to see. Like, you can see how there's old telephone poles, and yet, you know, now the swamp has filled in here. There's all this vegetation. And so all these animals have come back. Like earlier we saw the heron that was out hunting, right? And there's all these fish and all these cool things. And a lot of the animals from surrounding parks or wetlands could get here on their own and repopulate as it became a wildlife refuge, and there was space for them and good habitat for them. But the Blandings turtles, who are really awesome, cool, rare turtles here in Massachusetts, and would like to live in swamps that look like this, weren't nearby. And so there was no way for them to get here on their own, right? The closest population was probably like 20 miles away or so, and a Blandings turtle cannot walk 20 miles. So the only way for them to get here to find this really great, awesome habitat would be for them to get brought here by people. So U.S. Fish and Wildlife started this program where they have another refuge out in Harvard where there's a really good, healthy population of Blandings turtles, and they took hatchlings from that population to bring them here. But if you just take tiny little hatchlings, they're not gonna survive very well. The chances of a tiny hatchling surviving to adulthood is really, really slim. So you have to put a lot of tiny hatchlings here in order to make a good population. So that's what all the schools helped us with, is by raising the little hatchlings for a year. Instead of being the size of a quarter, now these guys are the size of like cheeseburgers. And so they are much bigger, right? They're gonna be way too big for something like a heron or a snake or a frog to eat. And so their chances of surviving to adulthood are much greater, and they're more likely to help restore the population more quickly here. So it's really exciting. So we are releasing some of these turtles. Okay, but I set a couple traps just so we could see what other kinds of animals are living in this wetland. And we caught some cool things right here. So we have two little turtles here, and these are the most common kind of turtle in Massachusetts. They're called painted turtles, and they get that name because they have beautiful little colors, stripes, yellow stripes, red stripes on their face and on their arms and their side of their shell. So they kind of look like they have face paint on. And so they're really cool little turtles. They're also the most common kinds if you're ever walking around and you see turtles basking on a log. It's most likely painted turtles. And it looks like we have, these are obviously two different sizes. This one is a full-size adult female. So this is about how big a painted turtle gets. They're not very big turtles. And I can tell that she's a female a couple different ways. One is by looking at her front feet, her claws. So female painted turtles have relatively short claws. Of course, if you've never seen a painted turtle foot before, you won't know whether this is long or short, but I've seen many painted turtle feet, and these are on the short side for claws. So that's one way that I know that this is a female painted turtle. And the other way is by looking at her tail. And if I pull her tail out, so her cloaca, which is her butthole, essentially, that's that little kind of lighter colored spot right there, where my thumb is pointing. And it's very close to the edge. She doesn't want me to pull it out, of course. That she's very close to the edge of her shell. And whereas a male painted turtle's cloaca would be much further out towards the base of the tail. So those two things tell me that this is a female painted turtle. And she's full-size adult, so she could be laying eggs in a couple weeks, which is very exciting. This guy is a juvenile, so, you know, kind of like a teenager size turtle. And yeah, I can't really tell whether he's male or female at this stage. It's hard to tell with a young turtle. He's also a little bit more shy. And we also caught, very exciting, a baby painted turtle.
Oh,
So this guy is a tiny little guy, and I'm gonna flip him over in just a second once you guys get a chance to see him.
That was less than a year, right?
No, this guy's more than a year old. So I'm gonna flip him over, and if I look at turtles, their shell grows outwardly, and so each year they put on a new ring of growth, and so you can actually count the rings on their shell in order to tell how old they are, just like you would count rings on a tree. This only works on small turtles though, because a big turtle, the shell gets really worn as it's walking around, and so it's too smooth and you can't really read the rings, and they also get really close together. But so this guy, if you look at his shell, and it might be a little hard to see, so I will bring it around. So can you see the lines there?
I sure can.
Right?
Oh yeah.
So this guy would have been 1, 2, 3. So he's like 3 years old. This size turtle.
So that says a lot, because ours have grown so much larger.
Right.
And
So a
faster.
painted turtle, when they first hatch, they're smaller than a quarter. They're very small turtles. So obviously this guy's grown a lot since he was born, but still in 3 years, this is how big he got. Compared to, let me grab one of these Blandings turtles that got raised. These guys were only a little bit bigger when they were born compared to the painted turtle, and already in 9 months they are several times bigger than this painted turtle. And
so that's what we call a head start.
Exactly. So if this guy hadn't gotten a head start, he would have spent the past 9 months in the wetland, and most of that would have been over the winter time, and so he would have been just hibernating, not eating at all. And so this turtle would have been even smaller than this painted turtle right now, but instead now he's 3 or 4 times bigger. And so now, even though he's only 9 months old, he gets to be on the level of the food chain of like a 5-year-old turtle, which is very good for him. Okay, so we have some painted turtles. Put that guy back in here for now. And the other thing that I got in the wetlands here is these guys. So these are little tadpoles, and there are just tons and tons and tons of these tadpoles. All I did was put this bucket in the water and scoop out some water, and I got these guys. And these are going to be a perfect food item for the turtles when we release them. So the fact that there are so many tadpoles here is a great sign. It means that, you know, as soon as we put the turtles in, they'll have lots of yummy food to eat. Blind turtles love tadpoles. So there they go. And oh no, here, this guy's dead now. Sorry, I might want to edit that out of the video.
Yep, video was not on.
Okay, I'm gonna put this turtle in the water with the tadpoles to see if he will eat.
Okay, live action feeding.
He might be a little just too nervous right now to be thinking about eating, because he's wondering what's going on. It's in a new spot. Sometimes I feel like the turtles, they stop and they look up at you like, what is this?
They're so beautiful. These
Yes.
guys look like they're. Is it because they're bigger than the ones we had, the lighter color on the top?
So the turtles will come in different colors, just, you know, depending on the turtle. But we do notice, especially as the bigger turtles, when they've grown kind of pretty fast, what happens is that when this turtle was first born, each of these, the shapes here on the shell are called scutes. So the shell is made up of all these scutes kind of fused together. And so each of these scutes, when the turtle was born, was the size of this little center part here, right? And then all this kind of stuff that's kind of radiating out, this is all new growth that has happened in the past year. And so since the turtle grew really, really quickly and put on this growth really fast, it tends to, it's almost like stretch marks a little bit. And we find that they tend to be lighter in pigment color when they grow faster like that. But when we release this turtle and it goes back out in a few years, if we were to catch it again in a few years, it'll be much darker. That pigment will start to develop over time. So the turtle will not stay light colored like this. Okay, so we have all these guys, and now we need to weigh and measure everybody one last time before we release them and make sure that we have their final data. So I have weighed my guys already, but I have all of your guys.
Do you want us to wear gloves to do that?
You can just hand me the turtles and I'll do it. So I have, let's see, who are these two guys?
Pebbles and Shelly.
Data sheet.